That sentence still sits in my chest like a bruise that never learned how to fade. It was late one of those humid southern nights, when even the walls feel tired, and I was standing in the doorway of my own kitchen, holding a glass I didn't remember pouring. My husband David sat at the table with his brother, laughing like boys do when they are trying to impress one another with stories they should have buried years ago. I didn't mean to listen. I didn't mean to hear my own name drop from his mouth in that slow, careless drawl he gets after 2 beers. She was just a youthful mistake, David chuckled. One of those things you do before you figure out what you really want. The room didn't spin. It didn't shatter. It just stopped. Like the world took one quiet breath and held it, waiting to see what I would do. I stayed still, perfectly still, because something inside me knew that if I moved even a little, the tremble in my knees would give me away. And in that stillness, I realized something. All the years, all the meals cooked, all the late-night talks, all the worries, and the hopes and the little sacrifices, the things wives do without bragging, they were just background noise to him. A mistake. Me. I didn't step inside the kitchen. I didn't argue or cry or show myself. I just stood there and listened as my husband, my partner of 15 years, reduced our entire shared life to a youthful misjudgment he outgrew. That night changed everything. But before I tell you how I corrected that mistake once and for all, I need to take you back to when life still felt gentle. Back then, before those words burned a mark into me, our home was a quiet one, the kind where the floors groaned in the morning and the sunlight hit the counter just right around 7 a.m. I used to hum while I cooked breakfast, letting the soft rhythm fill the house before David woke. We had our routines. David liked his coffee strong and black, no sugar. I preferred mine with a splash of cream and one slow stir. He'd sit at the dining table scrolling through the news, and I'd be by the stove flipping eggs or buttering toast like it mattered, a tiny act of love no one ever applauded, but that I cared for anyway. Our daughter Mia lived a few states away. Newly married, figuring out adulthood in her own crooked way. She called once a week, sometimes twice, with updates about her job or her husband or the new plant she was sure she'd keep alive this time. She had David's laugh, but my eyes. And every time I saw her face on the screen, something inside me loosened, just a little. Life wasn't perfect, but it wasn't broken. Or maybe I was too busy hoping to notice the cracks. David worked at a local construction firm. He'd come home with that familiar dust on him, the kind that clung to his hairline and the collar of his shirt. I used to tease him that he brought the whole job site home with him. He'd roll his eyes and grab me by the waist, telling me he'd rather bring that home than anything else in the world. He hadn't held me by the waist in months, but I kept convincing myself it was normal. People change. Marriage goes through seasons. He was tired, stressed, busy. That's what wives do, don't they? Explain away the silences, patch over the absences, put gratitude where disappointment belongs. I didn't see myself as a mistake then. I saw myself as a wife doing her best. Our home smelled like laundry detergent and old wood. The sofa had that one spot where the cushion sank too deep because David always sat there. The kitchen window stuck when it rained. The porch light flickered if the wind blew too hard. It was all familiar. All hours, most nights, after dinner, we'd sit out on that porch with the cicadas humming like a tired choir. David would sip his beer. I'd sip my tea. We talked about little things, gas prices, neighborhood gossip, whether we should repaint the bedroom that soft green I liked. Simple, steady, safe. That's what I thought. Looking back now, I see the small shifts I ignored. The way he stopped reaching for my hand on the porch. The way he chewed slower when I asked him about his day, like he needed time to rearrange the truth. The way he began stepping outside to take calls he used to answer in front of me. But in those days, I still believed silence was harmless. I still believed a wife should wait for the truth to reveal itself instead of digging for it. I didn't yet understand that silence is its own kind of confession. The day everything began to tilt, it was a Sunday, warm, lazy, and smelling of cornbread. I remember because I'd baked a fresh batch, the way my mother used to, letting the edges turn just a little crisp. David walked into the kitchen and paused. "You're making that again?" he asked. He didn't sound unkind, just uninterested. I felt something shift, like a chair being moved half an inch. Too small to notice, but enough to trip you if you don't look down. I wiped my hands on a towel. "Well, I figured you liked it." He shrugged. "Already halfway out of the kitchen, it's fine. I'm heading to Mark's later." Mark, his brother. The same brother who'd be sitting beside him the night David called me his mistake. I nodded, even though he wasn't looking. After he left, I stood there in that warm kitchen, the smell of baked cornbread wrapping around me like a blanket. I suddenly couldn't feel anymore. Something about the way he said fine echoed in my head longer than it should have. But I told myself to let it go. It's funny how often women tell themselves that. Let it go, it's nothing. Don't make a scene, he's just tired. But now I know the truth. The heart always whispers before it screams. Back then, though, I wasn't ready to listen. I didn't realize the next clue was already waiting for me, quiet as a shadow, just 2 days later. It was a Tuesday evening. The kind that drags itself past dinner and into dusk, wearing the same gray mood it woke up with. I was folding laundry in the living room, the TV murmuring to itself in the background. David came home later than usual. Not late enough to cause alarm, just late enough to make me glance at the clock. He walked in smelling faintly of cologne. Now, David wasn't a cologne-wearing man. He'd always said he preferred the smell of a good day's work, whatever that meant. But that night, something floral clung to his shirt, something soft and unfamiliar, like jasmine after rain. I looked up from the towel I was folding. You smell different. He paused, just for a moment, short, sharp, like something tightened inside him. Then he forced a laugh. One of the women at the office came by with perfume samples, sprayed half the guys as a joke. A joke. In the middle of a construction site. I didn't question it. Not then. I wanted to believe him. But a small voice in me whispered again, quieter this time. After dinner, he took a call outside. I could see his silhouette through the glass door, hunched slightly, shoulder tucked inward, like he was hiding the conversation from the night air itself. I wiped my hands on a dish towel, pretending to clean the counter, but my eyes stayed on him. His back was to me. He wasn't laughing. His hand was on the back of his neck, the way he held it when he was nervous. Yeah, I know, I heard him say. I know, I'm working on it. Working on what? When he came back inside, he smiled too quickly, too tightly. You okay? He asked. I'm fine, I said. But my voice had a question buried under it. He didn't notice. Or maybe he did and pretended not to. The house felt too quiet that morning, the way it does when something is missing. I walked into the bedroom to change the sheets, and as I pulled off the old pillowcase, I noticed something on the nightstand, a receipt. I would have thrown it away without a second thought, but something about the bold print caught my eye. A place neither of us had been in years. Too expensive for casual dinners, too romantic for a work lunch. My fingers moved before my mind caught up. I lifted it. Dinner for two. Seared salmon. 2 glasses of wine. Dessert. The receipt wasn't old, maybe 3 days, 4 at most. I tried to remember what David did that night. He had said he was working late. But construction firms don't serve seared salmon. My chest tightened, but I told myself to calm down. There were explanations. There had to be. Maybe it was a work meeting. Maybe someone else paid and he accidentally grabbed the receipt. Maybe. The heart loves maybes. They're softer than the truth. I tucked the receipt into the drawer under my sweaters, not because I wanted to keep it, but because I didn't trust myself to throw it away. My hands were shaking. My throat felt tight, but my mind kept yelling, don't jump to conclusions. Accept conclusions, don't jump. They creep. The following weekend, David announced he'd be spending Saturday with Mark again. But when I called Mark around noon, just to ask whether David wanted me to set aside some lunch, Mark sounded confused. David? He's not here, Mark said. Hasn't seen him all week. My heart dropped a long, slow fall. Oh, I said, gripping the phone a little too tightly. I must have mixed up the days. I hung up before he could ask questions. It felt like something inside me had shifted. Not broken, just shifted. Like a picture frame on a wall after a heavy footstep. I sat down at the edge of the bed. The receipt, the cologne, the phone calls outside, the lies about Mark. I still couldn't say the word. Not even in my mind. Instead, I cooked dinner. Chicken stew, his favorite. Women do that, when our hearts are uneasy. We feed the ones who hurt us. As if a meal might make the truth gentler. David came home late again, smelling like that same floral perfume. I tried something small. A test. How was Mark? I asked lightly. He froze. Just for a second. His left hand twitched. Then he forced a yawn. He's fine. Same old. Honestly, we mostly watched football. But Mark hated football. David knew that. I knew that. And now, I knew this. He didn't care enough to invent a believable lie. I swallowed my hurt quietly. Evie's voice always says, sometimes a woman's silence is not forgiveness, it's observation. And that night, I observed everything. The way he avoided my eyes, The way he kept his phone face down. The way he ate without tasting his food. The way he exhaled not like a man coming home but like a man running out of time. I saw it all. But I stayed quiet. Because the truth is, I wasn't ready to hear the answer to the question forming inside me. One night, about a week later, I woke up around 2 a.m. The house was dark except for the thin strip of light under the bathroom door. David wasn't beside me. I walked softly across the carpet, feeling every heartbeat in my feet. The bathroom door was cracked open just enough for me to see him sitting on the edge of the tub, phone in hand, head in his palms. He whispered into the phone, voice low but trembling. I know I have to tell her. She's been good to me. She doesn't deserve this. The world didn't stop this time. I did. My hand clutched the doorframe, keeping me upright. I didn't need to hear anything else. Not the name of who he was talking to. Not the reason he felt guilty. Not the details. A woman knows. Not from evidence, not from confession, but from tone. His voice held the kind of softness he hadn't given me in months. And the moment he said, she doesn't deserve this, my heart whispered back, you're right, I don't. I stepped away quietly, leaving him alone with his guilt and his whispered promises to someone else. In that moment, I made a decision. Not revenge. Not anger. Just clarity. If David was going to rewrite the story of us, then I needed to pick up the pen, too. And I would, soon. When the truth finally showed itself, it didn't come in a dramatic explosion. It didn't come with tears or screams or pounding fists on the table. It came quietly, soft, almost polite. But some truths bruise deeper when spoken softly. It was a Friday evening, the kind where the light slips golden through the blinds and paints everything in a warm lie. I had spent the afternoon cleaning not because it needed cleaning, but because it kept my hands busy while my mind raced ahead of me. The receipt, the cologne, the calls, the lies about Mark, the words I overheard at 2 a.m. A week had passed since then. A long week. A quiet one. David sensed the shift in me, though he didn't know its cause. Or maybe he did. Guilt makes a man perceptive in short, temporary bursts. I decided I wouldn't confront him through shreds of clues. No. If he had another truth he was living, then I wanted to hear it. From his mouth. Directly. Even if it broke me in half. That evening, I made dinner roasted chicken with lemon and garlic, the way he used to request on special nights. I set the table carefully, placing the napkins the way he liked, folding them into those little triangles he always admired. Small rituals feel like prayer when you know something sacred is about to fall apart. He came home around 6. The smell hit me before he even stepped into the kitchen. Not jasmine this time. Something sweeter. Warmer, a perfume I'd never worn. He paused in the doorway, surprised by the candlelit table, the soft music, the warm plates. What's all this? He asked, eyes narrowing slightly. Suspicion, not appreciation. I wiped my hands on the towel draped over my shoulder. I thought we could have dinner together, just us. A simple request, a simple moment. But it made him uncomfortable, and that told me everything. He sat down stiffly. His fork scraped too harshly against the plate. His eyes darted anywhere but toward me. The tension in the room felt like a string pulled too tight. We ate in silence for the first few minutes, the kind of silence that holds more words than any argument. Finally, I spoke. David, are you seeing someone? He froze. Fork, midair, breath caught in his throat like he'd swallowed something sharp. I what? His voice cracked. He looked at me like a man caught between truth and the hopelessness of trying to hide it. Just answer me, I said, my voice steady. Not cold. Not angry. Just steady like a woman who already knows. He set the fork down, slowly. His fingers trembled. I didn't want you to find out like this. There it was. Not denial. Not surprise. Acceptance. My heart tightened not in shock, but in confirmation. The truth had been sitting beside me for weeks. Now it finally spoke. How long? I asked. He wiped a hand across his jaw, eyes closed. 6 months. Maybe a little longer. 6 months. Half a year. Half a year of unknown, unshared, unauthorized truths. I nodded once. Only once. Who is she? He hesitated. Not out of kindness, out of fear. It doesn't matter, he muttered. It does to me, I said softly. He inhaled sharply, then exhaled like he was surrendering his last defense. Her name is Alina. I stared at the candles, watching the flames flicker as if they, too, were reacting. Alina. I didn't recognize the name. That almost hurt more. Not a familiar face, not a known history. Just a stranger slipping silently into my life from the edges. Where did you meet her? At work. He swallowed. She's a project coordinator. A work affair. Predictable. Ordinary. Betrayals rarely have imagination. And why? My voice shook on that one single word. Not crying, just trembling with the weight of everything he had undone. He rubbed his temples, elbows leaning on the table. I don't know. He looked up, eyes red. I felt like my life didn't fit me anymore. Like I made choices because I was young and didn't know what I wanted. The words slid out of him, slow and knife-like. My throat tightened. My chest felt hollow. So I was one of those choices? I asked. He didn't answer. His silence was loud enough. I sat there, staring at the table, remembering every meal we'd shared in this same room. Every birthday candle blown, every tear wiped, every quiet joy, every subtle ache. All of it reduced to a choice he wished he could revise. You could have told me, I whispered. I didn't want to hurt you. You did anyway. He looked away. And Elena? I asked. What do you want with her? His eyes flickered. That was how I knew it wasn't a fling. Not an accident. Not a moment of weakness. He was choosing her. In his mind, he already had. I don't know, he said again. But that was a lie. A softer one. A coward's one. I folded my hands in my lap, keeping them still. Because if I moved them, even slightly, the dam inside me might break. David inhaled shakily. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I didn't mean to hurt you. You've been good to me, better than I deserved. But he didn't say he loved me. He didn't say he wanted to stay. He didn't say it was a mistake he regretted. All he offered was guilt, thin and empty. I stood up slowly. The candlelight flickered across the table, stretching our shadows long and thin. He watched me, unsure, waiting for a storm that never came. Thank you for telling me, I said. He blinked in confusion. That's it? He asked. For now, because something inside me, something deep, quiet, and newly awakened had shifted from heartbreak to clarity. Marriage is built on thousands of small choices, and betrayal is built on thousands of small lies. But dignity is built on one decision. I walked away from that table, with my back straight and my heart shaking, not broken, just rearranged. And that night, when I lay in bed beside a man who was already halfway gone, I made myself a promise. If he was going to call me his youthful mistake, then by the time I was through, not with cruelty, not with vengeance, with truth and consequences. The morning after David confessed, the sun rose like it always did, soft, slow, unbothered by the earthquake that had torn through my marriage the night before. I lay there for a few moments in the thin dawn light, letting the warmth touch my face, while the rest of me felt cold. David was already up. His side of the bed was empty, the sheets barely rumpled. He hadn't slept well. The restless shadows under his eyes at breakfast told me that. But he didn't say a word about the night before. Not a single one. He moved around the kitchen with a stiffness that wasn't physical. It was the stiffness of a man waiting for punishment, but not brave enough to ask for it. He poured his coffee. I poured mine. We didn't speak. And that silence, it wasn't the soft, lived-in silence of a long marriage. It was the kind that sits on your shoulders like something heavy, something unwelcome. But inside me, the quiet had purpose, direction, focus. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to unravel. And I certainly wasn't going to scream and break plates, giving him the satisfaction of seeing me lose dignity. No, if David had chosen to live a lie, then I was going to bring the truth into the light calmly, deliberately, and without apology. I called Mia my daughter, not to tell her what happened. Not yet. Just to hear her voice. Ma, she answered, surprised. You're calling early. Everything okay? Her voice was warm, sleepy but warm, and I realized, in that moment, how long it had been since someone asked me if I was okay with genuine care. I'm fine, baby, I lied gently. Just wanted to hear you. We talked about small things, her new coworker, her attempt at baking a pie, how she and her husband were saving for a visit home, the ordinary pieces of motherhood I had always cherished. But when she said, I love you, Ma, my throat tightened in a way I hadn't expected. I love you too, sweetheart, I whispered. And in that whisper, a new part of me formed a part that remembered I was more than a wife, more than someone's mistake. I was a mother, a woman, a whole human being whose worth was not determined by a man who couldn't tell the truth. While David showered before work, I sat at the edge of the bed and opened the drawer where I'd hidden the restaurant receipt. I placed it in a small, plain folder. Next to it, I added a copy of our financial statements, which I printed from our shared account. His spending had shifted, subtle but traceable. Little purchases that didn't match his words, gifts from a boutique downtown, a hotel chart near his office, 2 Uber rides late at night from a part of town he never had business in. I didn't do this to trap him. I did it to understand the scope of what he had been hiding. Trust breaks quietly at first, and then all at once. I made an appointment with a counselor. Not to save the marriage, to save myself. There is a strange, sacred strength in hearing your own pain spoken aloud in a room where no one expects anything from you. The therapist was a soft-spoken woman with kind eyes. She didn't gasp or clutch her pearls. She just listened. And then she said something that settled deep inside me. Your value isn't something he gets to define, but your boundaries are something you get to choose. Boundaries. I hadn't thought about boundaries in years. Marriage, parenting, work. They'd all blurred into a life of adjusting, compromising, bending, smoothing over. But boundaries, that was something I could build. A line between who I was and who I refused to become. I was coming home from the grocery store, 2 bags of produce digging into my palms, when I saw David's truck pulling into the driveway. Too early. Much too early. He stepped out quickly, straightening his shirt as if he thought someone was watching. "Hey," he said awkwardly. "Hey." He followed me into the kitchen, hovering. Like a child who'd broken something and didn't know whether I'd found out yet. I began unloading the groceries. That's when he spoke. "I think we should talk." I paused halfway through placing apples in the bowl. "All right, talk." He exhaled hard and leaned on the counter. "I don't know what you want to do about us." His voice wavered. "I'm not saying I'm choosing her. I'm confused. I don't want to make a mistake." Mistake. There it was again. Except this time it was not I who trembled. I felt calm, steady, in a way that frightened even me. "David," I said softly, "the mistake was lying. The mistake was letting this go on for months. The mistake wasn't something you made in your youth." He looked up sharply. He knew I'd heard it. His face changed just a flicker, but enough. "You heard that?" He whispered. "I heard enough." He sank onto the stool behind him, rubbing his temples. "I was upset. I didn't mean it. But you felt it." He didn't answer, and his silence told me the truth he wasn't brave enough to say. Then came the moment that shifted everything. I turned to face him fully, not angry, not devastated, just clear. "David, I'm not going to live in a marriage where I'm an option. Or a placeholder. I deserve honesty. And if you can't decide whether you want this marriage, then I'll decide for both of us." His eyes snapped up. "You're leaving?" There was fear in his voice. Real fear. Men never expect the quiet ones to walk out. "I'm not leaving," I answered. "But I am taking back control of my life." He frowned. "What does that even mean?" "It means," I said, lifting my chin just slightly, "that I'm going to handle this the right way. With truth. And fairness. And with other people watching, so you can't twist the story into something that suits you." His face paled. He knew what that meant. But he didn't dare ask. Instead, he whispered, "Please don't make this worse." And I almost laughed. Make this worse? No, I wasn't making anything worse. I was simply preparing to show everyone exactly what had already happened. Not through revenge. Through accountability. Inside me, something shifted, slow but solid. A line drawn. A boundary set. A decision made. David didn't know it yet, but the real correcting of his youthful mistake had already begun. And I was doing it with dignity. With intention. With a calm he couldn't understand. Because when a woman finally sees the truth, she stops reacting. And starts acting. I didn't set out to expose David. That wasn't my goal. But truth has a way of finding daylight, especially when someone has been burying it under months of excuses and perfume that doesn't belong to you. What I did set out to do was simple. Make sure I wasn't the only one carrying the weight of his choices. For too long, I had protected David's reputation the way wives are taught to, quietly, instinctively, as if our dignity is tied to defending a man's weaknesses. But something in me had shifted, and once that shift happens, there is no shifting back. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. David's mama, Miss Joanne, was turning 70, a sweet, spirited woman who always reminded me of the church ladies back home, sharp-tongued but soft-hearted. She had invited the entire family over for dinner. David's siblings, their spouses, a handful of cousins, even a couple of old neighbors. It was the kind of gathering David loved, the kind that made him feel anchored, respected, safe. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't going there as his wife who smoothed edges and covered faults. I was going there as a woman who refused to carry secrets alone. David tried to get out of it. "I don't think we should go together," he said that morning, pacing the kitchen. "It'll look strange." I looked up from slicing vegetables for the dish I was bringing. "Why would it look strange?" I asked, steady. "We're married." He flinched at the word married. "You know what I mean?" "No," I said gently. "I don't." He opened his mouth, closed it again, and finally muttered, "Fine, let's just go." He wasn't afraid of his family's judgment. He was afraid of mine. And he should have been. Miss Joanne's house smelled exactly the way it always did. A mix of old furniture, worn cornbread, and the faint scent of lavender she dabbed behind her ears. People hugged, laughed, filled plates with too much food. Children ran through hallways, grown folks argued over who made the best. Potato salad and old gospel music hummed from the radio in the corner. I smiled, I hugged, I helped set the last dish on the table. But underneath all that, I was bracing myself. David stuck close to me, at first nervous, tense, overly attentive in a way that made everyone raise their eyebrows. This wasn't the relaxed, joking man they were used to. This was a man walking on a tightrope over a truth he didn't want falling into the wrong ears. Of course. Family always senses when something is off. It was Mark who said it first, David's brother, the same one he'd lied about visiting. "Y'all seem quiet," he said, narrowing his eyes as he reached for a biscuit. David stiffened beside me. "We're fine," he said too quickly. I didn't correct him. Not yet. But the moment arrived on its own. Miss Joanne stood at the head of the table, holding her glass of sweet tea like it was champagne. Everyone quieted down, turning toward her. She thanked everyone for coming, thanked God for another year, and then she smiled right at me. "And thank you, sweetheart," she said, "for always being there for my boy. You've been good to him. A blessing." David shifted in his seat, his throat tightening. His eyes flicked toward me, begging me not to say a word, but silence wasn't protecting me anymore. I set my glass down gently, cleared my throat once. "Miss Joanne," I said quietly, "you've always treated me like family. So tonight I want to honor you with something honest." The table fell silent. Forks stopped mid-air. Mark leaned forward, sensing trouble like a bloodhound. David's color drained. "Honey," I held up my hand. Calm, controlled. "No need to interrupt, David." Miss Joanne's brows knit. "What's going on?" I took a breath, slow and steady. "The truth is," I said, voice even, "your son has been seeing another woman for at least 6 months. He admitted it to me. And I don't want to sit in a room full of people I love pretending things are what they're not." The words hung in the air like smoke, silence. Heavy, dense. Then it hit like a wave breaking on shore. Mark slammed his fork down. "You what?" he barked at David. A cousin muttered, "Lord have mercy." An aunt gasped so loudly it echoed. Miss Joanne's hand flew to her chest, her face crumpling. David put his head in his hands. "I didn't want this," he began. "You didn't want this." Miss Joanne snapped, her voice shaking. "You didn't want the embarrassment, the shame. But you wanted the affair?" David's eyes glistened. "Mama." "No," she said sharply, trembling. "Don't you mama me right now." I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. This wasn't revenge. This was honesty, sunlight on a wound he kept insisting wasn't there. I stood quietly, preparing to excuse myself from the table so the family could speak without me being the center of it. But Miss Joanne held up her hand. "No, baby," she said to me. "You sit. You've earned your place at this table more than he has." I sat back down gently. David stared at his mother like she'd betrayed him. "Are you really taking her side?" he asked, incredulous. Mark scoffed. "Her side? You cheated on your wife and lied about seeing me. You think this is about sides?" The room buzzed with murmurs. One cousin whispered, "I knew something was off." An aunt muttered, "Men don't appreciate good women." A younger cousin whispered, "Did he really?" I simply breathed. Slow, even. For the first time in months, I felt weight lifting off of me. Not happiness, not yet. But ease. The kind that comes when truth no longer has to hide in shadows. Miss Joanne walked around the table, came to my side and placed her hand over mine. "You listen to me," she said softly, voice trembling. "You are not staying in a marriage where you are disrespected. You hear me? You deserve better than a man who throws away a blessing." Tears welled in her eyes, not mine. Hers. And David David looked like a boy who had misplayed every piece on the board and finally saw the checkmate coming. "Mama, please," he whispered. "No," she said. "You did this. Not her. Public consequence isn't about humiliation. It's about clarity, about accountability." And David wasn't used to being accountable. People avoided meeting his eyes. Some hugged me tightly. Others whispered, "I'm so sorry." Mark followed David outside to give him a talking to so loud the neighbors probably heard. But me, I simply collected my dish, thanked Miss Joanne, and walked to the car. Calm. Steady. David got in the passenger seat beside me, defeated, hollowed out. We drove in silence for several minutes. Then he whispered, voice cracking, "You didn't have to do that." "I didn't look at him. I didn't expose you," I said softly. "You exposed yourself the moment you decided to live in two lives at once." He swallowed hard. "You embarrassed me." "No," I murmured. "You embarrassed yourself." We drove the rest of the way home without speaking, but inside me, something was settling. Like sand after a long, violent shake. The truth was out now. The weight no longer mine, alone to carry. All that was left was the rebuilding, and the final correction of the mistake he thought I was. The night after the dinner at Miss Joanne's was unbearably quiet. Not the gentle, comfortable quiet of two people winding down after a long day. This was a hollow quiet like a house holding its breath. David stayed in the living room, lying on the couch in the dark. I could hear the faint creak of the cushions every time he shifted, restless, probably replaying everything that happened. Shame has a way of echoing louder at night. I went to bed, alone. Not angrily. Just finally clear about who I was and what I would no longer accept. And for the first time in months, I slept without waking to the sound of whispered phone calls or heavy guilt pressing the mattress down beside me. The next morning, sunlight warmed the bedroom, but the bed felt more spacious than usual. I turned over, stretching out, and realized how long I'd been shrinking myself to fit beside someone who had already left emotionally. David opened the bedroom door quietly. "You slept in here?" he asked, voice small. "Yes," I said, adjusting a pillow. "And I will continue to." He looked down. "I didn't mean for you to move away from me." "You moved first," I replied gently. "I'm just following your lead." He pressed his lips together, but didn't argue. "Do you still love me?" he asked suddenly. My breath caught, not because I didn't know the answer, but because I realized the love I once carried didn't feel the same. "I love the man I married," I said. The one who looked at me like I wasn't a mistake. His face twisted at that word. Mistake. He had said it so easily that night. And now it hung between us, like a shadow he couldn't escape. I was angry. "Stupid," he whispered. "No," I said softly. "You were honest. You showed me how you truly saw me." He looked away, but the conversation wasn't an argument. It wasn't a plea. It was clarity for both of us. I called Mia. This time I told her the truth. All of it. There was a long silence on the phone. Then, "Ma, I'm coming home." "You don't need to. I'm coming home." She arrived 2 days later, suitcase rolling behind her, eyes already brimming with the fire daughters carry for mothers they love. She hugged me so tightly I felt my ribs pressed together. That hug alone felt like medicine. When she saw David, her expression hardened. "Dad," she said with a coldness I'd never heard from her. He opened his mouth, but she wasn't finished. "You promised Ma forever, and you threw it away like it was nothing." David looked like someone had slapped him. "I'm trying to fix it," he whispered. "Then start by letting her breathe," she snapped. The protective anger of a daughter is something fierce, but she didn't stay angry, not forever. Later that night, once she saw me relaxed, once she saw I wasn't falling apart, the heat in her softened. "Ma," she said, "you're stronger than I ever understood." I smiled, brushing her hair behind her ear like I used to when she was small. "Strength doesn't always roar," I said. "Sometimes it's just choosing yourself quietly." I met with a lawyer. Not to end the marriage, not yet, but to understand my rights, my safety, my boundaries. The lawyer, a calm woman with smart eyes, listened patiently as I laid out everything. The affair, the lies, the financial shifts. She nodded. "You're in a good position," she said. "You've documented well. You've been responsible. If you choose separation or divorce, you'll be protected." Protected. That word gave me peace I hadn't felt in months. I didn't tell David I went. Not because I wanted to deceive him, but because it was something I needed to do just for me. I kept going to counseling. Each session peeled back layers I didn't realize I'd built around myself. Guilt that wasn't mine. Responsibility that wasn't mine. Fear that wasn't mine. My counselor asked me one question that stayed with me. Do you want to save the marriage, or do you want to save yourself? The answer came easily. I want to save the part of me that believed I wasn't enough, and with each session the heaviness lifted. He stopped going out. He stopped taking calls outside. He deleted whatever number he had been protecting. He tried to apologize, small apologies at first, then bigger ones. I miss us, he said one evening, standing in the doorway while I folded laundry. I miss who we used to be. I want to fix this, and I believed him. Not because he sounded convincing, but because guilt finally had consequences. He cooked dinner, cleaned the house, went to therapy himself. But here's the truth most people don't admit in marriage stories, sometimes healing, is choosing a different version of life, one where honesty replaces comfort. I told David I needed time. Not a week, not a month, time without expectation. And he gave it to me. Real space, real silence, real patience. It didn't excuse what he did, but it did show effort, not the performative kind, but the slow, humble kind. We were sitting on the porch one evening 6 weeks after everything broke open. Mia had gone home. The cicadas were humming like they always did. David cleared his throat. I talked to Ma, he said quietly. Oh? She told me what I did will follow me for the rest of my life. I stayed silent. And she said, he swallowed. She said if I ever wanted to be half the man she raised, I'd better start by apologizing the right way. I looked over at him. What's the right way? He turned toward me fully, his eyes tired but sincere. To stop calling you my mistake, he whispered. The air stilled. He continued. You weren't my youthful mistake. You were the only good choice I made when I was young, and I nearly lost you because I forgot that. I didn't speak, not because I didn't believe him, but because I finally understood something. His words didn't define me. Not anymore. Whether we rebuilt slowly or parted gracefully, I was already whole again. My healing didn't depend on his decisions. It depended on mine. We agreed to start fresh, not as a couple trying to glue broken pieces back together, but as two adults learning each other again, honestly, slowly, with boundaries. No rushing, no promises made too quickly, no sweeping things under rugs. We attended couples counseling. We talked openly, sometimes painfully. We treated each day as choice, not obligation. And somewhere in that slow, intentional rebuilding, I found peace. Not naive peace, not fragile peace. Peace rooted in knowing I could walk away if I ever needed to, and walk toward myself without fear. When I look back on everything now, the lies, the perfume I didn't wear, the dinner he didn't share, the words I wasn't meant to hear, I don't feel anger anymore. Not even sadness, just a quiet understanding of something I wish I had known sooner. Sometimes people don't betray you because you aren't enough. They betray you because they aren't ready to face the parts of themselves that are lacking. David and I, we're still walking this road one step at a time. Some days feel hopeful. Some days feel tender. Some days feel like two people rebuilding a porch with old wood slowly, carefully, checking every beam before trusting it with weight again. But here's the truth I want you to carry with you, the same truth that carried me. Healing isn't about going back. It's about going forward with clarity. Healing taught me boundaries. Healing taught me dignity without shouting. Healing taught me that silence is only powerful when chosen, not forced. Healing taught me that being a good woman does not mean tolerating being a forgotten one. Whether our marriage stands or falls, I stand. I am whole. I am steady. I'm not a mistake, not youthful, not old, not ever, and neither are you. So let me ask you, from one heart to another, if someone you loved called you their youthful mistake, would you walk away, or would you correct the truth like I did quietly, firmly, with dignity still in your pocket? Tell me in the comments, because I want to hear your voice, your stories, your strength. And if my story touched something inside you, go on and subscribe, share this with someone who might need a reminder tonight, and stay with me for the next one. You know, Evie's voice always has another story to tell. Until then, take care of your heart. It's the only one you get.